Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
So we are going to talk with Mary Barnes, who's the CEO of Alzheimer's Community Care. And as I was driving here early this morning, I wondered if Alzheimer's patients are up early in the morning. I know a lot of them don't sleep at night. And so I was going to ask you, Mary, do they then sleep during the day?
Good morning.
Good morning, Mary.
Getting right into it, there's a time when there's this period when Alzheimer's patients become bored. They do start sleeping more during the day because they don't have enough activity. And we call it they're experiencing an empty day. So if they have an empty day and there's not much stimulation going on, they will start dozing off more and more during the day. And then, we're humans. We have this need for sleep, and then we have this need we don't need sleep. And so, guess what? At night we start getting up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and thinking that you're starting your day. And that's where other things could start happening, like wandering and walking out of the house. And that's been the fear of caregivers, because here they are up all day, and they're trying to get their sleep, and then they got to have that third ear out there, worrying about their loved one being going around the home, maybe trying to go in the refrigerator, or maybe thinking about getting a cup of coffee, or something they would normally do when they would get up anyway.
Good point.
But they're doing it at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Good point. So, yes, that's why I remember a book when I first started working in this field, the 36-hour day, and that was the first time that I really made aware of all this. Well, I jumped in pretty quickly because as I was driving, I was thinking about that. But what I wanted to tell you is, you know that my darling husband did pass away, and that's during the first of this year. And that's why I never got to your conference. So I wanted to talk about the conference.
The conference, of course, is always a huge success, and we really focused on the different parts of the disease, of the various neurocognitive disorders, not just Alzheimer's, but we focused on Lewy bodies disease, which is a very unknown disease process, but Dr. James Galvin over at FEU, who just came down maybe a year ago to the university, because he is a renowned researcher, but especially in Lewy bodies. And it's a crossover between Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So there's a lot of other pathologies with it that is different from Alzheimer's. And that's one of the things we really, really try very hard to get families to understand, that you need to get a good diagnosis, because Alzheimer's and Lewy bodies are different. And what happens is, if you don't understand what Lewy bodies is, and you've actually been diagnosed with it, you can't come up with a good care plan. So it's important don't walk out of the doctor's office when the doctor says, oh, you've got dementia, you don't have Alzheimer's. The word dementia only means that you've got symptoms. It isn't a diagnosis. So you really, really got to understand what is causing the dementia. It's like saying, I got a fever. Would you walk out of the doctor's office and say, oh, I got a fever? No, you'd say, Doc, what's causing it? And that's what you have to do with the word dementia.
Well, saying that, and we have talked about a lot of things, so I don't remember that when I first took my mother, I used to call it the Memory Center, not the Memory Disorder Center, over at Broward North. They also told me that she had Lewy body, and this is in 1990-something. And, of course, I could hardly even say the word Lewy body. What does that even mean? But I remember now some of the problems she was having, she was having hallucinations and things like that. And now, of course, it's more of a common word. And I didn't realize that Parkinson's and some other neurological effects all kind of come into all that.
Yes. And delusion and hallucinations is very common with this disease, and as well as with frontal temporal lobe. So to really understand what is going on with your loved one and why certain things are happening, so you can at least be aware. It's very frightening to caregivers if they get a surprise behavior that they didn't know was coming, and it makes it hard for them to adjust to these. That's why institutionalization, when a person's uninformed, when a family's uninformed, they just think, well, gee, I can't handle this, so I've got to make other decisions. If they know, and if they know they have a source that they can call, or have a source that they can really be periodically accessible to and updates and stuff, that makes the caregiver and the family much stronger.
Well, Mary, so that brings up a very good point. If someone is suffering from this, will you still take them into your daycare centers?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how do you manage that if they are very upset? How do you handle that?
Let me tell you, one of the things that is the greatest success with our daycares is that they are, first of all, we understand all those diseases. Our staff is very, very heavily trained and educated on the different various behaviors, and also how to redirect and how to cope. So there's a lot of activity, not like at home when you've just got, and I know you've got home health agencies. You can have home health agencies and in there, and you think you're trying to do the best. To me, it's the kiss of death if you just keep that person isolated from other people, because that's what happens as the disease, because the patient themselves don't want to go outside. They get reclusive, and because they're very, they can't identify with people that's going on around them, conversations, mixture of different individuals they can't relate to. So going to the specialized Alzheimer's daycare, which we're licensed, and there's a lot of standards that we have to meet in that license. And one of them is a well-educated and trained staff. And, of course, we do 1-on-5 instead of 1-on-6. That's the normal, health daycare. So when you got that license, you already know that institution or that agent, that daycare is going to know how to cope with that. So there's a lot of activity going on all the time. And that is a stimulation as well as a soothing type of process for our patients, because they're having relationships, they're eating together, they're singing together, they're dancing together, they're having also physical exercises together. We as human beings, I don't care what we have, we are not meant not to have relationships throughout our lives. And the neurocognitive disorders isolate that opportunity. That's why the daycares are so critical to the quality of life for our families.
This is why I love having you on the radio show, Mary. You open up such corridors of information that most people would never get, even your staff. I can see why they're so enthusiastic, because you're such a great leader, and you're so compassionate, and yet you're so smart. You've had this wavelength for something like 30 years, and you haven't grown tired of it. And the nice part is you're still living to see your dream come true. Yes, you have. We haven't cured Alzheimer's, but there are so many things that you have put together that help with this disease.
Well, my big thing right now is, I'm writing an article in our magazine, but it's called the 3Ds. The 3Ds, which is denial, and then desperation, and then depression. Mm-hmm. If we don't get past the denial, if we can't help families and also help the patient, because when Alzheimer's comes into your life, and our patients that could become patients, they understand that something's going on. So we have a survival mechanism in our brain that when we start losing something, we try to compensate with another type of behavior. And when you really are realizing that your memory is getting, you're having a harder time, especially with short-term memory, to understand what's going on. You get frightened. But do you tell anybody? Not necessarily. You might in casual conversation. Oh, I couldn't. My memory's getting worse or something like that. And which as we age, because of other things, we've got so much in our brain to begin with, but we also are so preoccupied with the challenges that, God, we're already into May, soon into June. I mean, just keeping up with everything that's going on around you is a challenge. So we just take it casual when we start really starting to forget. And then do we want to, by the time we're into that process, do we really want to go to a doctor and have a doctor tell us something that we don't want to hear? No, we don't want to go to a doctor. Alzheimer's patients are very difficult to take to doctors because they just don't, they themselves understand that if they start saying it and start living it, which they are living it, but to have it more in a conversation, because they also think it's less of them. There's still that stigma and that shame, and we're trying so hard to have that overcome. And I think we've come a long way the last 5 years, hearing Dr. Galvin, who talks about Lewy bodies disease, and you're seeing different types of individuals like Glenn Campbell. They did that HBO, that special, not HBO, but that special, and of course the movie that won recognition, I'm Still Alice. So there's a lot more conversation, and there's a lot more outreach, and everybody's beginning to realize that we have to get past this denial. If we don't get past the denial, and the caregiver is also in that place as well, then we go to stage 2, which is desperation, because we start, other things are starting to happen, even, because you can't stop the process. So then there gets to be more of a unity between the caregiver and the patient. How you doing, Mom, Dad? Oh, I'm fine. No, everything's okay. And then all of a sudden you get that sad news that the caregiver's had a heart attack or hasn't been able to take care of themselves as well as they should, because they're always stepping in and trying to take care of their loved one because they feel they're the only ones that can do this. And so the desperation gets more intense as different other types of lifestyle around both of them starts declining. Then we go into depression. And if the caregiver and them is left on their own and isolated, depression becomes a huge issue. And that's the very last place we want to be.
Oh, my, I'm sitting here listening to you and saying, I am so happy that you're on the radio show this morning. I mean, you are so articulate and so smart, and I don't know anyone, of course I'm only really here in South Florida, that has the combination of what you have. You not only talk the talk, you walk the walk, and you have made such a difference. I do have a question about something I think I'm noticing, and maybe it's not true. Are younger people getting Alzheimer's?
Younger people, yeah. I guess it's because we're more aware.
Oh.
I'm not quite sure in time as this whole nuance starts playing out in our society. Is it caused from other types of lifestyle and experiences? I was just talking to a therapist up there in St. Lucie County who works with the VA, and we are now going through a program that we're really specializing in helping veterans as well as a certain number for our community patients. And in talking about the veteran, and we've been now, we've been talking to a lot more in the American Legion, and great bunch of people, great bunch of people, very caring, wanting to help their own veterans. And there is a change in a person's brain when you're under fire and you're going through this high, intense, fearful, stressful period, which you do when you go on a tour, and when you're like they're doing over in Syria and other areas, Afghanistan, and when you're in a constant state as a veteran, as a soldier, that you're in this fearful state of mind, there is according to the therapist, there is a change in the chemistry of that brain. And that's why veterans are so hard to help, because they don't want help. They're on the fringes of, they don't want to be in the centerpiece of needing help. So as when they age and you get into this Alzheimer's or some sort of other release valve that has, kept that fearful state of mind embedded, then it starts coming out. And I was fascinated by her. She's been a therapist for over 30 years, and she just went into it. And I said, oh, that's a whole new education piece for myself. So that's where, when we talk about the Holocaust, when people were in that state of mind of fear over a long period of time, it's kind of the same type of syndrome. And you really got to treat and support that person with a different mindset. And one of the things the American Legion and the veterans have said, veterans help veterans. So now we're into a big shift with the veterans to cultivate veterans to help each other and train them as well. So that's where recently I feel that we're really making a big impact as well.
What a new information, and you just brought up something so important that, yes, they're being helped. And I wondered if the Holocaust victims, who so many were silent for so many years, had that kind of therapy that you're talking about now with the veterans.
Well, I do know that there's been a grant. There's been monies, set aside for the special type of attention, but for that coping and understanding that change in the brain chemistry, and now it makes sense that this would happen with a veteran that went in action at that time. And because I know Second World War veterans, that now we're getting into the Korean War and we're getting into the Vietnam veteran, that there's nightmares, there's different types of emotional triggers that go on that I've come to be very familiar with the Second World War veteran. So now, with just the other day, I've been in this now since 1985, and to learn this the other day with this therapist, I thought I was amazed. And of course, we have a wonderful education vice president of education, Karen Gilbert, and I'm going to link her up with that's got to be part of our education. And I said, why isn't I'm sure it's known within that circle of the VAs and all of that, but we need to get it into the community. And so this is where Karen's going to be able to do that with, and with nurses in our practicum nursing training program. So it's a nuance of information, and that's what's happening, really, Anita.
Oh, I'm just sitting here with my mouth open.
Just getting to understand this brain, this whole, and it's really what comes to culmination at this stage of our lives is our life and our life experiences. Does impact us.
Yes, and it makes sense. Something you should know, our expos are dedicated to the veterans, so we have hundreds of veterans who come to our expo. We need to talk about maybe how you can be involved. I have a lot of things I'd like to talk to you about, but not off the air. Well, I'm going to have to just sit down and meet with you, but let me just go over some of the things that you've been saying then. So now we're talking about Lewy body, which is it's Alzheimer's, but it has other complications. We're also talking about stress and trauma and what might be happening to veterans. So if veterans are listening to us, it's very important that you start, thinking about this yourself. And the one thing I want to bring up, though, and I haven't done this, Mary Barnes is CEO of Alzheimer's Community Care. I told you about that, but let me give you some phone numbers. So if you want to go to their website, which is an extraordinary website, it's so much information, it's called ALZCare, ALZCARE. That's short for Alzheimer's, ALZCARE.org. You can also call them for newsletters, for information, for support groups, or how to get involved with one of their daycare centers, which they have all throughout all throughout Palm Beach County, and then I think a little bit north, but Mary will tell us
Martin and St. Lucie.
Martin and St. Lucie, okay. The phone number to call, remember this is Pencil Talk Radio, so get your pencils out, 561-683-2700. 561-683-2700. Now, they have a 24-hour Alzheimer's Community Care crisis line. That means if you're with someone that has Alzheimer's, you don't even know what they have, you need to call. It's 800-394-1771. That's 800-394-1771. Is all this correct that I just gave out, Mary?
You did it beautifully.
I just want to make sure. And it's Mary Barnes, and she is available for large speaking engagements. Some of you are really curious about this, and you can call there. She'll help you. They have a wonderful conference once a year. So it will be again next when?
It's going to be, we're still nailing down the date.
But it's in February or March?
It's going to be, it's probably going to be, believe it or not, with all the conferences going up in our community, it's probably going to be around May this year, because we just couldn't seem to get the dates.
Excuse me, May, okay. Not May, May 2017.
2018.
Yeah, I was going to say, and you said May this year. Okay.
No,
You're right.
We've already.
Yeah, I know. I knew that. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So it could be May 2018. Well, you'll always, of course,
Absolutely.
keep me up to date on that, and I will hopefully be able to go to this one because you've always been so extraordinary with what you do. Well, Mary, I really appreciate your getting up. I know you have a very busy week and but we have so many listeners. It is amazing how many people listen to this show, and not just people who are over 60. I've had people that I meet and they say, I listen to your show because I'm getting up, I'm going to play golf, I'm going to this. Really? I've learned so much from you, and I am so happy because I, like you, am very dedicated to this.
Yes, you are.
And we're a real pair here. So I am going to set up a time because I was just thinking as you were talking, I just need to have you on more. We need to do more things. I love that article with the 3Ds. You're just so good, and I appreciate what you have done over the last, I say 30 years. So is it 35?
It's since, I started in 1985.
Yeah, that's what you said.
So, it's time marches on.
Right.
What is the time?
But you look better than ever. Actually, I see you. You look great. So,
thank you.
Yeah, it's good. All right, well, we're going to get this on YouTube also, so we'll be back to you, Mary. Thank you so much.
Stay well, my friend.
You too. Bye.